Just waiting. All right, we are being live streamed now. Okay. All right, what's up, y'all? Hey. Just waiting for my little buffer thing to go on the other side so I can well, there we go. Perfect. All right, hey y'all, what's up? It's your girl, just B.Spriggs, and I'm back again here for Activate July. We are closing off on our last, right now, say you are a liar in Jesus' name. Anytime y'all get if y'all get any type of feedback, negative feedback, my lights just blink. So that's why I said, Satan, you are a liar. But it's your girl, just B.Spriggs, and we are here at Bright and Brave Enterprises, LLC, doing Activate July. And this year, our theme is all about babe care. And babe care is a cute way to say, how are you taking care of yourself to execute business? So right here, you might see her to my left, my right, up, down. I don't know what it looks like on y'all's side. But you will see this person that I've been talking about all the time. Everybody is always asking, girl, you got so organized. What you got going on? How did you do it? And I want to give some kudos to my girl, my time management coach, Roslyn Renee. She was there with me, the trenches, and she came out with me on the other side. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of share how I got into just being a little more aware of talking about emotional intelligence and all of that great stuff. So this is one person that was kind of a part of that journey, and I wanted to share that experience with y'all, hoping that you guys can get some good kudos. So we're going to our interview questions. I'll let her introduce herself first, but we're going to our interview questions, and then we'll go into her presentation about what kind of drew me to her and sitting down and being a client. All right, go ahead and introduce yourself, Roslyn.
Hi, y'all. So thanks, Bianca. Appreciate the intro. So my name is Roslyn Renee, or that's what I go by on the internet. I am a podcaster. I am a wife. I am a mom. I'm an entrepreneur. I feel like I'm 15,000 things, but at the core of it, I love talking about mental health and definitely self-care, and for sure God is like the homie. That's my dude. So I really love talking about anything as it relates to the wellness overall of Black women. I think that that's the area that I feel like I love to talk about. I am also a licensed therapist, so I have been in the mental health space now for 10 years and have done that professionally. And in my entrepreneurial career, I've done a ton of different things. But overall, in general, I have been a full-time entrepreneur for a year, and I have been in the entrepreneurial space for about 4 years before I fully jumped into full-time entrepreneurship. So I feel like I could talk about this all day. So that's a little bit about me. And yeah, like I said, I'm a wife and a mom. Been with my husband for 10 years. We've been married for 4. So yeah, I've known him since I was 22. So I feel like I really know anything about dating. If somebody asks me anything about it, I don't think I know what that means. So.
Oh, thank you for introducing. That was a lovely introduction, Roslyn. We'll jump right into the questions. So first, tell us what you do, what you offer, what services you offer now, other than your
Yeah. So like I said, I've been doing entrepreneurship for about 4 years. And in between that time, I have done an array of different things, but primarily education around mental health. I've done a lot of work with a lot of different women on different things that's introducing healing and mental health to people. I've done my podcast now for 4 years, and it has reached so many different people. And I think that's a popular thing that people are talking about now, which is mental health, which I think is where my, I guess, background information has kind of reached people. And then I coincide that a lot with faith. So I've done master classes, I've done challenges, I've done workshops, I've done a lot of collaborations. I currently co-host with 3 other girls a membership. I have done coaching in an array of capacities, so one-on-one coaching as well as group coaching. I did that for 2 years before I completely switched to now doing therapy full-time. And now I'm in the space of just like wanting to serve. So although being in the front is great and being the CEO is great, I really feel like my heart now is to serve entrepreneurs in the background. That may change, I don't know, but I feel so led to serve, because I think that a lot of times being in the front, you got so much going on, you can't halfway think. And so I feel like I know that background so well that enables a person that's in the front know what to do. So a lot of the work I've done over the last, I probably say 3 solid months has been in service. So that's background coaching, that's helping with organizing, that's really doing a lot of administrative stuff, that's doing a lot of like project management. So I feel like entrepreneurship has a way of having variety, when you know what your gifts are. So that's pretty much what I do. Additionally, still doing my podcast. I do speaking. I still do a lot of teaching, and anything that kind of aligns with my gifts, I just kind of go with that. But yeah, that's probably what I will say that I do a lot. I've got 15,000 jobs. I literally have 15,000 jobs.
Yes, that's a lot of jobs, but you do it so well. And that's a good thing that you talk about, all your roles that you have. And with having all of those roles, how do you measure your success? Like, what makes you feel like I'm accomplished with having all of those roles?
So I think it takes a great deal of intention. So when I was pretty much, I just hit my year mark this month of being a full-time entrepreneur. 3/4 of my year full-time has been coaching. So I measured a lot of my success from transformation from clients and also income. But if I had to just measure transformation from clients, I served over a course of 2 years, close to almost 90 women in a one-on-one capacity or in a group setting. And I mostly did productivity coaching. I found I'm very organized, and I wanted to teach that. And so I measure success by client transformation, but additionally also income. So over that course of time, I made a good amount of money doing that as well. But also success in really being able to still balance family. So I was very particular about when I started my business. I didn't want to give away or sacrifice my family or myself. So I think starting therapy when I started going to counseling almost 5 years ago. So it'll be 5 years in January. And I think when I went, I learned the value of prioritization of self and like why really taking care of yourself is important. And so I learned boundaries. And so I think that helps me to like really be able to balance both entrepreneurship and family at the same time. So I would say that I don't feel like I have sacrificed my family in the midst of owning a business and it being successful. So I would say that too.
That's very good. Like, I feel like I don't need to ask questions because you're answering them as you're talking.
No, ask them because I can talk all day.
That was really good. I love how you talk about therapy. Like, talk a little more about the
We have
importance of
time beyond the whatever time we go over is fine. So yeah, so I, as well as being a practitioner and being a professional in this space, for a long time I didn't know that I was struggling. So I started counseling 2018. It was about 3 months before me and my husband started counseling. So 2018 was really pretty much like Facebook days, Instagram kind of like we post on Instagram, but it was chronological order. There was no algorithm. There was no like competition. So I really feel like back then I was more so just like trying to understand. I was 27, trying to figure out what I want to do in my life. I'm about to get married to this man. And I really struggled when we were engaged with my childhood coming back to me and like, is our marriage going to be successful? Is this going to be a thing? Like what was going on? And so I had heard a professor when I was in grad school, which was 2 years prior, say, every good therapist has a therapist. And so I've explored therapy, but never don't think I had the emotional understanding of what it meant to do deep work. I think I was just very surface. But also when I started therapy, I was 24. So I didn't really understand or had the exposure that we have now of therapy being very normalized. It's very normalized now. It was not normal, especially as a Christian, to go to counseling. So I remember the day I called the therapist I have now still. I was at work and had a conversation with one of my coworkers, and I just felt really anxious. And I remember saying, I need to talk to someone. Called her up. We set up a session. I thought I was going for counseling. Here I am still in therapy 5 years later. And so I think I didn't realize at the time that I really struggled with deep childhood wounds. And I didn't have the verbiage or the language to explain that. So if somebody asked me, I would just say, I just feel really anxious. But really, it had a lot to do with deep trauma that I didn't know about. And so I explored it, and I didn't have therapy buddies at the time. I didn't have anybody to process what was happening with, just my therapist. So I went to her every week for about almost a year. And then we kind of switched to biweekly. But in that year span of time, it was when me and my husband first got married, and it was rough. It was really rough, not for me and him, but for me. I just had a lot of trauma and baggage I didn't really understand. But also that trauma and baggage impacted the way I interacted with God. And I didn't know that at all. Didn't know attachment to my parents or my relationship with my parents was a direct impact of the way I viewed and also treated God. I had a very religious mindset. And I feel like that had a lot to do with my upbringing, because my mom experienced a lot of trauma. So she was very wanting things to be controlled. So she did her best, but it came from a place of trauma. And so I think that understanding that, the biggest gift I will say that therapy gave me was language. Language for emotions, language for how I needed support, language for my perspective of God. I remember the therapy session where a therapist asked me, how do you view the Lord? And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, how do you view him? And I said, well, I feel like he's a disciplinarian. He just is just waiting to punish me. But that was a very clear impact of my relationship with God. So all of that having to be unpacked, which was extremely uncomfortable, extremely scary, extremely I associated any negative feeling of shame as I'm bad. And I really found that there were a lot of people that struggled with it, which is where I feel like the podcast was birthed. But therapy was my saving grace. So I almost yell it from the mountaintops now for every person to go. I feel like one day my son will probably go to therapy because of me. Maybe. He may not. But that will be an option for him if he needs it. And so I'm all for it. But I think that we don't realize, not even as Black people, but also just in general believers, the necessity of our trauma and really exploring that to work through it, so that we are aware of the tactics and the triggers that are often used by the enemy, but also really how those things also are really clear indicators of how we react to a lot of stuff. And we blame it a lot on, sometimes it is the enemy. Sometimes it is very much so spiritual. I'm not knocking spiritual warfare, but a lot of it too is just deep, deep wounds that we've never been given tools for, to learn to overcome, to learn how to work through. Nobody talks about it. I mean, I'm not gonna sit and talk to my mama about how she hurt me when I was 10 years old on something. I may talk to her about it now, but that wasn't a narrative or conversation that was explored as a kid. It was, you do as I say it, period. But that's never giving me as a kid the tools to know how to process through emotions. So long-winded answer, but very much so that's what I would explain to anyone that would ask about therapy.
I'm over here laughing because that was like my perception of God. Like, I'm in trouble. This happened because I did something wrong. So I'm just like, I'm really not trying to go back into the chair and just stay in this YouTube environment.
Oh,
But
but I also say that to say, like, imagine like never having language for that. And like you just kind of live your whole life thinking God is just a punisher, which in general, God is just, but at the core of it, God is love. And so I think it's very hard at times to unpack how shameful we feel with God. But that really impacts our communication with him, our approach to him, how much we may avoid him, how much we may avoid when somebody's like, you have a calling on your life. It's like, no, I don't, girl. Do you not know what I did last week? Like how that pigeonholes us to our relationship with God. And so it really like can also really impact our interactions. If my husband, if I always think that he's gonna yell at me when I come to talk to him, I'm never gonna say anything. I'm always gonna walk around with eggshells. So it's the same view. And I think we need to kind of unpack that some. Therapy is a space to do that.
y'all heard it first. All right. Make sure y'all go to therapy. If you're not out here going to therapy, make sure you go. I highly recommend it. Talk about that's like how you've seen therapy show like the benefits or the fruit from doing that like hard work. Like how are you starting to see tangible results now?
Yeah, well, one, and this is not nothing to do with me, but I think therapy is more accepted, which makes it easier to have open dialogue with other people about it. There's this whole move of like, you can be a Christian and go to therapy. You absolutely can. And I think that that is in a blessing culturally around normalizing mental health, because I think we've only seen it as, and not to like go super, super deep, but we've kind of just as a church or as a body labeled people who experience mental health struggles as being possessed or having a demonic spirit or all of this, and really there's just a lack of understanding of like the real understanding of what mental health is. But also too, like most people that go to counseling may not have a serious mental health crisis like schizophrenia or bipolar or anything like that. Some of us have real trauma, like being molested or witnessing domestic violence or witnessing your parents do drugs or alcohol, or you're an adult and you get, sexually assaulted in a college, or even maybe not that deep, but like you struggle with rejection or you struggle with abandonment, or you might have experienced your parents talk to you real crazy and you think that's normal, or you isolate or self-harm or want to commit suicide and we don't have conversations about that. We think as a body that we're not accepted by God. And that's not the case. And so I think the benefit of it being normalized is that we can now have those conversations to support each other. For myself, I would say the fruit of therapy is language for me. I'm able to now ask what I need help with, but really in a very general sense, I would say self-awareness. I am extremely aware of what I'm feeling. That can be good or bad, because sometimes I'd be probably like, I got too many feelings right now. Girl, it's like, but also I can pinpoint my triggers. So like if something was said to me or somebody said something to me, or me and my husband had a conversation, he said something that was really hurtful, I can pinpoint why I'm anxious or where it started, versus like probably just feeling overwhelmed and not really knowing why, which then allows me the ability to then practically put things in place. And also being able to know how to take care of myself, what works, what doesn't work, what works for me may not work for somebody else. I am not, as much as I love people, there are sometimes I just don't like people and I don't want to be around people and I want to be home. If I was obligated or felt obligated to like be a people pleaser because I used to be one, I would feel like very bad for not wanting to interact. Whereas now I could really care less. Really care less. So I think therapy has given me permission to also like really put boundaries in place and honor what works for me and what doesn't work for me. So that, and then also really focus on my priorities, which is my family, my husband, my kids, and be mindful of that.
Love it. Love
Oh,
it.
and last thing I'll say too is practicing forgiveness, because I blame for a long time in counseling everything on my parents. And there are times I still have triggers where things will come up and I'm like, see, if they had just taught me this, but like they only work with the capacity they have. So it's also helped me to have forgiveness and compassion, to not project my emotions onto people who just may not have the ability to support or be what I expected in the moment. And that's okay.
Whew, heavy on the forgiveness.
Which is
That's
hard.
like, yeah, it's sometimes it can be a challenge. That's something I'm like working on every day.
Girl, it's
Uh,
real. Real.
so one more question I have, because you're just great. This is exactly, somebody needs this, so this is perfect. How do you stay grounded? And I ask because, like, following you on Instagram, you do brain dumps and you're talking about tips and strategies on how you can kind of get through the day when you're not feeling the day. So what helps you stay grounded when everything else is happening around you and you're like, I'm not going to move out of this piece that I'm in right now?
So I would say I think I've learned to treat life in seasons. I heard this from a friend once, and I think as somebody who's extremely ambitious, I have slowed down a lot. I used to be, and probably maybe within the last year, extremely like, I'm gonna go get it. And that has been kind of like the premise of my life. But I also have realized that much of that has been influenced by what I may see other people doing or what I may see other people going after. And ambition is great. I'm not knocking ambition. But I think in moments and seasons where I'm recognizing I'm not the best right now, I need to honor this moment and slow down. So currently I'm pregnant. And when I tell you the first 3 months of my pregnancy, I literally was concerned about my own mental health because it just was like a dark cloud. And I was feeling so I felt obligated to like maintain this status quo of what I've already created. But I really learned and realized through some of that time was that I am not obligated to show up for anybody if I don't have it. I'm not obligated to do a thing but show up for my family. And at the time, that was all I had. And so I think it's really going back to point A and also like being okay with slowing down if the season calls for that. So treating life in seasons also helps me to realize what God is doing in that time. Because sometimes, although we may have a predestined life, sometimes what we do in that season can be contingent upon what happens in the next season. And so if I'm rushing something that may be far ahead, I may not be honoring what God's trying to show me now. So I think staying grounded is also knowing that I am not obligated to anybody but my family. I'm obligated to serve myself in a way that's going to make me well. So I would say grounding really is making sure I'm okay. And if I'm not okay, I have a whole set of things that I do, but I've gained a lot of these tools from counseling, but I'm a process thinker, which is hence why I talk so much. So I have a set of friends that I talk through a lot of stuff with. And they're also very emotionally aware. So it's not I'm venting to complain. It's a very much so, okay, sis, let's talk through this kind of thing. So I really rely on that support. I have a husband who's extremely fearless and very much so an optimist. I can be very pessimistic, meaning like everything is going to fail at times. He's not. So I lean on that a lot. I would also say I'm a person that sleeps. So I require rest. So I make sure I get sleep. I make sure I spend time with my son. I more recently was struggling with my consistency with God. Probably over the last couple of weeks have been really consistent with him every day. That is a non-negotiable. And when I find that I don't spend time with God, I'm really all over the place. So that gets challenged often, especially when I'm not well emotionally, because I feel like, God, you ain't talking to me. You ain't saying 2 words to me right now. So I don't really got 2 words to say to you. So my pattern also of the way I react to God comes up often. My default, which is, I don't want to talk to you right now. That's what I used to do as a kid with my parents. I would avoid to maintain peace. And so I often do that with God. And I notice when I do that, I'm not well. So I try to get back to that. What else helps me a lot? I'm a recently more active. So I would say being active, but really like those first 4, like time with family, friends, grounding and spending time with God and rest. I don't really go too many weeks or days without like 7 hours of sleep, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, because I don't do well when I don't. So those will probably be the main ones. And of course, I use therapy. I use the tools, and I try to check in with myself often. So that's where sometimes it may take time. Like it took me about 3 months to realize this is a season where I may not show up. And you know what? The people I serve are going to be all right at the end of the day. I am nobody's God, and I don't want to be. And baby, y'all gonna get this good content when it comes back. But right now, I'll just be a lurker on Instagram. I'm not posting a thing. I'm just gonna look at stories and my friends and like pictures, and that's it, and keep it moving. So I think not again, and that may not be everybody's story. Some people may be like, "Yeah, be consistent, all that." But if you don't really have it, I am not that person to say. Especially if you have a platform, I think we can get very pigeonholed into like not honoring the fact people are humans and they need rest. That it's a requirement for us to feel like we have to show up, and that's just not my philosophy anymore, at least on business or life. I think there are times and seasons for everything.
Love the seasons part. I love how you talk about, like what group of friends to have a conversation with when you're having that vent moment. And that's important because they have to be able to be aware of everything that's what's going on, just other than themselves. I hope I said that right. Just come out of themselves, be able to see, So I think that's important, especially as an entrepreneur. You got to have the right circle around.
Yeah, and you also have to be 1000% okay and know that you are not a burden on somebody else. I think we really think we're burdens and that everybody got something going on in their lives, but like truly me sharing myself, unless I'm annoying and I'm really not doing anything. But like if I'm really asking for support, it is not going to hurt my friend's life. Like their life is not going to go in flames because I'm sharing what's going on with me. But you have to do it with people that are literally going to support you. And so I may not always go to my husband because the homeboy is going to give me straight chaser. And I don't want Hennessy in the moment. Sometimes I really need Hawaiian punch. I definitely don't want Hennessy. But there are times where I may, and I'm using an alcohol example because that's the only way I can think of it. But like sometimes I really just need fruit punch. I cannot take you being hard Hennessy right now. But then there are times where I need that, and it's like, okay, I pull on that, but you can't think you're a burden. And I think that took me a long time to get over. So, and also not to put everything on him. Like I needed a variety of people that I trust that can give me sound wisdom and advice. And I think that has been the biggest blessing to have that.
Yes. all of the above. I love it, especially just talking about knowing who to talk to, when to talk about it, and not getting caught up in those people becoming your therapist. And I really learned that. I learned that with you. Like, you know what? I gotta stop treating people like they're my therapist and go find me a therapist.
It's okay if you do, though, but your friends have to be able to communicate, sister, I think this is why you need professional help. They have to also know that within themselves. Like I will say in a minute, girl, I think this is something you need to talk about with somebody, or deeper, or truly just be like, I don't have the words to tell you. But it takes time. Like it took me time to get there. That did not happen overnight. So I think that it just give yourself the space. And I tell clients, I started therapy at 27. That was 27 years of life that I lived of not knowing and not having the tools. And I've been in therapy 5 years now, just now getting to a place where I'm understanding somewhat of what I experienced in a way that I can articulate, work through, and understand. So to think it's overnight and think like, oh, if I go for 6 months, I fixed everything. That's extremely unrealistic. So I think it's just very important to like be kind to yourself through the process of it. Because there were so many times in counseling, I'm like, I'm so sick of talking about this. Why are we still talking about this? But I had not passed through it yet. So it takes time.
Yes, I like that. Like my spiritual mom says, like, you know, she used to do like marriage counseling with me sometimes. And she would say, not being afraid to have that tough conversation until you get to where you want to be. Like, just keep hashing at it, keep hitting that rock until that water come out.
And it's okay. I have told my husband multiple times, you are mean, you are mean, you are mean. He would tell me, no, you're just sensitive. You're just sensitive. You're just sensitive. But I've had to learn to not take what he says to me personally and not project. And he has had to learn to watch the way he says stuff. And I can't tell you how many fights we've had about that. I just feel like, you are just so mean. You are so rude. And I just do not like when you say stuff to me like that. It just really hurts my feelings. He's like, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. You're just being sensitive. And I'm like, you're not even hearing what I'm saying. So we've had multiple fights. And still, there's sometimes he still says stuff, and I'm just like, Jesus, why are you so mean? But he's not. His personality is very straight. And he's just, I am just being honest. And I am Miss Fruit Punch. I want to give you all the sugar.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's balanced, but it has taken us time. And we've been together for 10 years.
A lot of information. Yes. I love how, that's perfect. That sounds like me too. But this is really good. It's so good that I want to like push and transition into your presentation, and we can talk about it more. Y'all, please grab your notebooks. This is important. When I sat down and listened, it might be a different variation, but when I sat down and listened to her talk about some of these topics, my eyes opened. And when they were open, I could not shut them at that point. All right, so y'all listen up.
So I am going to really focus on the self-care piece today. And I'm really going to try to give you some practical things. I'm going to talk probably more than it was on a slide, but I really want to, I know that this is a conversation that sometimes moms need to have, so I am going to focus the conversation on moms. But I'm really going to talk about self-care and like starting really small and kind of go from there. So we'll see if I can share my screen. And Bianca, you can tell me whether or not people can see it or not.
Okay, hold on, let me pull it up on my phone.
Okay.
It should be showing though, because I can see it on my side.
Okay. So I'm gonna talk about self-care and like prioritizing into your schedule. Part of this is also going to be a discussion around like procrastination and self-sabotage a little bit, but I'm really going to focus on trying to make this relevant to people on like how you can start really small, because I think sometimes we stay in the place of not knowing what to do, and we flail and we just kind of like don't start very small. And so I want to do that today. So I'm gonna quickly introduce myself again. My name is Roslyn. I'm a wife and mom. There's a picture of my little handsome man. He's a little bit older now from this picture. He was 1 year old on this picture, but that's my husband. I am a licensed therapist. I'm a podcaster. My podcast is called Therapy is Christian. I love me some coffee, girl. And being pregnant, I can only have 1 cup of coffee a day, and it is a really driving me insane. But I have a passion to teach more believers that mental health is close to God's heart. And I truly believe that. Even saying that makes me happy, because it makes me really feel like I'm grounded in what I do. So I want to talk a little bit about capacity, because I feel like we don't talk about this often when it comes to like care for ourselves, but also overall when we think about time management or productivity or all these things we want to do, especially as business owners or entrepreneurs, we really don't kind of hone into self first. We kind of think externally around what it is that we feel like we can't do because of all these other factors. And so I put these 2 cups here to give examples, because I like to give this example of capacity. So capacity, in a sense, is basically what I think, in a simple way to explain what something can hold. And so many times, especially if we're going through a healing process, for sure, our capacity may be lower in that season than it is in other seasons. But also when you add in, factor in kids, you add in, factor in marriage, a job, a business, factoring in trying to maintain your beauty, because I know that's a whole thing with women, our bodies, everything. We think we can do all of this, when in all actuality, we really can just do this. You can just manage what you have in front of you. So there's this sometimes feeling of obligation to overload ourselves with all these things, which is not to say we can't do, but there are some better strategies on how you can do that in a more effective way that can be utilized. And so I use this example a lot of times because I think that we try to really think and don't put boundaries in place for certain things, when it takes a lot to manage and build something, especially from the ground up. I think when I started my business, I was fortunate to not have kids at the time, but thinking about having kids, it takes a lot more intention. It takes a lot more discipline. It takes a lot more help. And to do those things, you really need to understand your current capacity. And not even the current capacity in you doing things, but current capacity emotionally, current capacity mentally, current capacity financially, current capacity, and all those other factors, because they weigh on our decision making and our ability to do those things. So really thinking about this is not saying you can't do a lot, but when this is full, you can fill this cup up. But if you were to be completely empty in here, there's no way this could be full. There's no way that this larger cup can even be poured into. And that's what I really like to explain with that. So I like to talk about this from why self-care is valuable. And I really am going to talk about this even more deeper, going into procrastination around this. But like, we have to understand that boundaries are necessary. And a lot of us have not been taught boundaries. And I don't say boundaries with just saying no, but boundaries are incredibly important when it comes to when you're looking at how to help yourself be well, but also really from a place of being able to balance. So boundaries, in a simple way, if I give my example, some of the boundaries I have in my life is I'm extremely strict on my bedtime. I don't really try to be in the bed no later than 9:30, earliest 8:30, because I have a strict boundary to make sure I get time with God in the morning. I have a boundary with making sure I don't really work after my son gets home. So usually I cut my day off by 5. If I take a call, it's pretty much once or twice a week. And there are a lot of weeks now that I don't do that. Boundaries when it comes to even how much I'm on my phone, which is another thing that's another day, because I feel like there could be a conversation about all of that. but boundaries with even when I give my kid to my family to watch because I need time with my husband. That is a boundary. I need date nights with him. It just is I feel like I need adult time to not think about that child. I need a time to not think about being a mom. And so that's a boundary I put into place. Boundary with making sure that I'm not on the phone all the times of the night. But even boundaries with friendships, like if my friends are calling me all the time and I don't have emotionally the ability to pour, I very much so will say, hey, I love you, but I don't have it. I really don't have it. And so being able to put boundaries in place allows me the opportunity to then put parameters in place on how I spend my time. Because most of the time when we procrastinate or avoid something or avoid this level of putting these boundaries in place, is because we have a fear that somebody's going to say something, or we have a fear that it's not going to work out. When in all actuality, especially when it comes to business, you don't have to work at the pace of anybody. You work at the pace of what you have. And if in that moment, if it takes you 3 years, it took me close to 3 years before I went full time of strict time in my business. So that's early in the morning, that's sometimes on the weekends. When I had my son, I remember I was really scared about putting him in daycare because I just did not really want to. And that was necessary. It was a boundary that I had to have. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I realized I couldn't do it. That was something I had to put into place. But like when we stall on that, or we don't make sure we put those things in place, we're also stalling on the things of being able to actually see wellness for ourselves and being able to have the capacity to be able to do these things. Also, being well takes time and intention, time with intention. So going back to kind of like with growing a business, the biggest thing is working through your own limiting beliefs around this. So if you think that it's not going to work, I really have this thing now with saying I'm not on anybody's timeline. I am on the timeline that is set in the season that God has placed me in. I remember when I told God my quit day, it was about a year and a half before it happened. And it was actually before the pandemic. I remember it was 2019. And I said, hey, I'm quitting my job 2021. I remember when I put that date in place, I just felt the urgency to put a lot of habits and routines into place. But my thinking had to really shift. And so there were a lot of times I really had to work through a lot of stuff in counseling too, with how I felt about myself, my capabilities, pushing through what I didn't know I could do or couldn't do, but really also having the habits and routines to back it up. We neglect habits and routines so often because they're not sexy, they're not cute. But like habits and routines are really around what are you doing on a daily basis? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? If exercise isn't like the biggest thing on your wellness thing, then it doesn't have to be top priority right now. Maybe it is time for you to read a book, or time with God, or time with your husband, or individual time with your children, to build those habits and routines in place so you can feel well to do those other things. But also individual time with you. Like, do you require that? Some people don't require that. I feel like men don't require a lot of individual time for some strangers. My husband's like, I can always be with you. I'm like, sir, I could be by myself right now. Just know. So I say that to say, like, what habits and routines do you require? Accountability and seeking support. Like I was saying earlier, we have to get past this feeling of feeling like we're a burden. One, that's not a healthy way to look at things, but also it's not sustainable. If you feel like you're a burden constantly, you're always going to feel like whatever you have going on is going to be a detriment to someone else. When in all actuality, you're there for someone. What they do doesn't bother you when they bring it to you. Unless, like I said earlier, they're just annoying. But if they're not, then you giving support, vice versa, doesn't mean you're a burden. And like I tell clients all the time, if you think about it, if you tell your friend something that's going on with you, or you need support for something, let's say somebody died and you need support or just venting about it, is their life going to go up in flames because you share something? And most of the time, the answer is no. But accountability and support is more than probably half of the thing that you need when you're trying to work through self-care, but also anything you're doing. And then again, a repelling avoidance. The more you avoid something, most of the time, I like to think avoidance is a reaction to anything that you're thinking either is not going to happen, or thinking it won't work, or thinking that there's some uncomfortability. Like, for example, I've recently been thinking about changing careers completely. Like, I really want to delve more into my ability to like really help businesses and companies like become very organized. And so I've been looking into project management. That is so outside of the scope of what I do. And it also felt very uncomfortable to do because I felt like I was in mental health, but I also like have this extreme gift in this area, and I'm avoiding using it because I feel so pigeonholed to this area. But also it's really about understanding like I can give myself permission to explore this. And so instead of avoiding it because I think I have to like stay in this place, giving myself the opportunity to explore. But that also goes with anything. If you feel like you are procrastinating with pricing something, if you feel like you're procrastinating with stepping out and doing something in your business, or trying something, or doing it if you don't like get a lot of views or attention. I think we feel like those things won't work, but really it's all about just pushing through and doing it consistently, but also not avoiding. Because when we procrastinate, we are intentionally avoiding because of something we are thinking that we're not able to do. So this can come with when we put these things in place, mom guilt, which I wanted to really be able to talk about, because I think that mom guilt is real, but it doesn't have to be debilitating. I actually was talking to a client earlier about this because not to even share her business or nothing, but just thinking about this, because there can be oftentimes a form of self-sabotage when we think about mom guilt. And so I was going to ask, like, how would you all describe mom guilt, or what thoughts come up from you? But a lot of times with moms, we react off of oftentimes some level of what we've been taught. So and it goes two ways. It could go off of the way you were raised. And so if you saw your mom give everything to her family, you may in turn do everything as well. Or it could be you may see somebody or see a highlight reel on Instagram and feel as though they're managing all of this well. How are they doing it? Maybe I should do that, when there is a true desire to not probably do all of that. And so we feel guilty, and guilt has a lot to do with shame of I should be able to do this. I should be able to do X, Y, and Z. I should. When we should ourselves, we don't also give ourselves the chance to learn what works best for us. And so mom guilt comes a lot of times of, if I'm not there today, my kids are going to turn out bad. Or if I do this, that means this is going to happen with my kid. Or if I go pursue this, that means I'm leaving them behind. And really it's about a matter of priorities of how can I make or include my kids, or how can I even have a moment where I explain to them what's happening, or include them in the explanation. So I think it's a dance. It's not something that's always possible in the moment. You learn as you go. But I think one of the things we have to think about is our kids are with us from 0 to 18. I never want to think that I dedicate 18 years of so much to my child that I never give myself the opportunity to experience 18 years of both. And so that comes with a lot of negotiation with your partner if that comes up, but also really an understanding of really getting support. And so those are some of those things related to that, but I definitely wanted to hear from y'all on that. But what does this look like when we put it into practice? So when it comes to, and one more thing I want to say about mom guilt, we have to really also understand that if you're going to overthink this, like you're going to, I don't think I have overthought anything more than when I had children. You're going to overthink X, Y, and Z with your kids. because that is a form of love. So I think we think so much about what is going to be the next step for their future because we love them, we want the best for them. But we often have to recognize too, if we're not well, we can't be our best for our kids, which is also why I say I have to have a date night with that is a non-negotiable date night by ourselves, not with our child, so that I don't even have to think about, have the perimeter of my brain go into mom brain. I'm only thinking about him at that moment. And so those things I would say, like, you're going to wrestle with this. This is not a bad thing to wrestle with. You have to experience the uncomfortable emotion to move past it. So what does this look like to put into practice? So you have to look at your priorities again, and what works. So in seasons where you've seen success, what were you doing that worked? And additionally, what are the small steps? So most of the time, if I'm in a season, like currently, I really feel like I'm in a season where I've pulled back completely, which is not my normal cadence, meaning like this is not my normal consistency. I'm usually extremely involved on the internet or consistently posting on my podcast or really doing things where I'm showing my face because that was part of my business. But I also think in this season for me, success looks like being in tune with God, being in tune with what's happening with me now that I have to think about having 2 kids, thinking about what I really want my business to look like, what areas of my life am I not satisfied in? So one of the areas I have not been satisfied in is actually doing counseling. One-on-one counseling has been very challenging for me, and I didn't realize it until I was in it. And so that's where this kind of shift of like wanting to switch careers or do something else. I enjoy educating people. I enjoy sharing about mental health. I enjoy sharing with clients about these things, but maybe not being the practitioner, maybe being just the educator or the advocate or explaining and understanding. I never understood what my professors were always like. Sometimes they just did not want to practice. And I was like, why? That doesn't even make sense. Why would you go get a degree if you don't even want to practice? But now I understand it's not always for everyone. So in saying it to say that it requires a lot of reflection where I can't pour because I'm internally having my own things. So in those seasons where I've experienced success, what worked for me last year was having a strict schedule where I was working on my business constantly. That doesn't look the same in this season. So it worked then, but sometimes now you have to adjust. What is non-negotiable is time with my family, time with God, talking to friends, checking in with friends, and also having a lot of time where I check in with myself. And so the small steps is having that short non-negotiable list and putting that into practice constantly. When those things are falling off, I find I'm not well. In my busy seasons, what was seen as success is, again, not really working when my son is home. In seasons of success, things that worked was consistently checking in with my therapist. Seasons of success, things that worked was really honing in and making sure that I'm lined up with the goals that I want to do. And sometimes that meant making sure I had a strict schedule during the day. And so those are being very intentional in wherever you are in that season. So the how. So how this looks, and I'll give y'all something at the end of this, is what open spaces do you have in your schedule? If you have none, what areas of your schedule are currently taking up too much of? So is that too much time in your phone? There have been so many times in this month or the last couple months where I've downloaded and deleted TikTok because I love TikTok so much. Oh, Jesus. But I spent too much time on TikTok. So I had to delete TikTok. And I'm like, I miss TikTok. And I deleted TikTok again. But it takes up too much time on my schedule. And also I started to see I'm going to bed later because I'm scrolling on my phone. Or I didn't want to do work. So I'm like scrolling on my phone. And so it's like, being aware of what those spaces in your schedule take up too much time is very important. And I hear somebody's little feet by the door. Is this a busy season where you may have less time, but need to relook at your schedule? Sometimes in certain seasons, you are busy. where there are a lot where you literally are passing, the days are passing you. And that doesn't mean you can't find success in that, but you got to be very clear about what ways am I being poured into as well. Who can you ask to help, or what can you delegate? Very great thing to think about. More recently, I have thought about when I had my baby, ordering meal kits like HelloFresh, or getting our laundry sent off, because I'm not going to want to do laundry. And as much as that may seem like not the most domesticated thing to do, it's necessary for me to take care of myself while I just have a child. And I know I still got to maintain 3 other people's clothes. I sent our laundry off one time a couple of months ago. Best $70 I ever spent. Sent everything off. They washed it and it came back. Everything was folded. I didn't even understand it. It was just beautiful. But like, do you need that in this season? If you don't have the funds for that, what can you cut? Or even thinking about things to delegate, what things really need to be delegated off? Are your bills on auto pay? Are you always forgetting your bills getting paid? Do your bills go on auto pay? Like, those are things to delegate. But even then, what are things that can be taken off your plate? If work is very overwhelming, what can be delegated? If putting the kids' night routine, even not necessarily delegating, but how can I include them more so that I'm not as stressed? But thinking about these things can be the how. So a couple of resources. There's a resource called bit.ly/do less to do more. So it's on there. You can go to that's the actual website, and you can create a schedule for yourself. So actually, it's a Google Doc. You can copy it and actually create a schedule for yourself. There's also a great podcast. I love this girl so much. Her name is Amber, but she hosts the Balance Working Mama podcast, and it's basically all about wellness and balance as a mom. But she goes into balancing. She has 2 kids, and she's married, and she works full time and has a business. So just what does balance look like? Instead of be working out, she does a bunch of different things and talking around this topic. So great podcast. And then also my podcast is Therapy as a Christian. I've done a ton of topics, so that can be an opportunity for you to get some things as well. So that's it. That's it. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope that you got something from that. So yeah.
Yes, that was very helpful. I was over here like I was in class all over again, just watching. I love you how you added the mom guilt part in, because we don't talk about that enough.
No,
we had like 7 people. Yeah, we have like 7 people. We had 7 people watching like actively. So woo, got some shepherds. I do see that there's like 3 people right now. She did ask if anyone had any questions or answer if anyone has any questions. So if you have any questions, make sure you drop them in the chat, and I guess I'll read them off to Roslyn and she'll answer them for you. So I'll do it, we'll do like a 2-minute window or something.
Yeah. And
if you have any questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can always follow me on Instagram. I am not there now. I said to myself I was gonna make a comeback in August, but then I don't know, girl. This is me every single month, Bianca. I literally say, I'm gonna get back on Instagram. And then I just be like, no, I'm not gonna get back on Instagram. And then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get back. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna get back on Instagram. So it's really, but you can still follow me there. All the links to my stuff is there, and my podcast. When I am active, sis, okay? That's where I primarily am. So yeah, I haven't even announced to the world like I'm pregnant. Like, it's just the whole thing. I just feel like I don't have it right now for y'all. I'm trying to figure out my own life, and that's okay. So, but yeah, if you have any questions, you can connect with me there. You can DM me. I'm always in the DM, sis. So I hope that this was great for y'all. Yeah, you got something from it.
Yes, I hope you guys did too. Thank you so much, Roslyn. You already gave us where to find you at, and we appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing this topic. If there's no more questions, you make sure you go back and you holler at Roslyn, but we're going to close out here tonight. And thank you guys for watching. And thank you for your time, Roslyn. Really appreciate it.
Girl, you good. You know I love you. You good. You
Yeah. All right.